Well, come to Splunk Talk, the only podcast that's all Splunk and no junk. I am Burch. Here's my co-host.
I'm Hal. And I was thinking, what if we had a theremin, and we would play it as you go up and down?
Is a theremin like one of those secret smells?
No. Theremin.
Oh, theremin.
It's an old instrument. I think of it as the first synthetic instrument. I don't know if it was or not, but it sounds like a electric slide whistle.
Oh.
And so you would like old, I don't know, like movies in the 50s or maybe even older. They wanted to create some spooky sound. They use a theremin.
Oh, I am going to look that up. Also, if anyone has any theremins, not pheromones,
no,
then we will happily accept your old theremins for silly ridiculousness in our recordings. This is episode 40 of season 2, The Docho. And today we're going to have Bryan Burns join us. But before that, we always like to catch up with what's going on. Mr. Hal, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, man. I am. We're in the new year. It's everything is new. There's a new year.
You just said new year in 3 different ways.
I'm just kind of taking this thing and this thing and put them together in the new year. No, on the home front, like my remodeling that had been going on for months, unending, is actually over with one tiny minor exception, and it's great, man. We're like moving furniture back in and all that stuff, so it's like a big load off.
That must be nice. I saw some pictures. They look really nice.
Yeah, we're happy.
On
the tech front, I'm just like rolling with the changes because they come hot and heavy at Splunk, in January. So
yeah, we like to move fast.
Mm-hmm.
I will also acknowledge this is episode 40. There's a chance that this comes out before episode 39. In episode 39, we had a lot of fun talking about some things that we then decided we don't want to release yet. We want to leave it stewing and build some excitement.
What if we release this as 39 and call that one 40?
But in the episode at the beginning, I say what the episode is. So it's imprinted, it's branded.
Okay.
With that now.
All right.
And clearly I can't edit and switch them.
Well, would you backdate the episode, so release it out of order? But
yes,
if you backdate it, then it'll show up in order in people's podcast feeds, I would think.
Yes. I found a little hacky hacks. I think if I upload them in the correct way and blah blah blah.
What have you been up to?
Well, I know like last recording, you had a really cool unboxing video.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Hal not to eat during the recording, and he's still got food in front of him, so he can't help himself. So I thought today I would do an unboxing. Okay. So I am going
to move my lunch so that I can't see it. That'll probably prevent that problem.
Oh, okay.
You carry on. I'm
okay. So here's my unboxing. It's so not exciting, but any like tech person is probably gonna find this so dorky and wonderful.
Mm-hmm. I hope so.
Also, I'm realizing for anyone watching the video feed, I did not directly connect my video to my computer, and that's probably why it's a little choppy. But hopefully that doesn't cause any issues for anyone today. Anyway, Hal, would you please read?
You might want to turn off your blurring of your video, because Zoom is gonna not let me see the things.
Yes, well, hold on. Let's see if I can. What if I put my face next to it?
No, it's just gonna be weird.
Can you figure out what it is?
Duster, electronics duster. Did you get a case of it?
A case of what, Hal? A case of what?
Canned
just in
air.
Case people aren't watching.
Case of canned air.
A case of canned air. 12 cans of air.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think any tech person who has the respect of cleaning their computer and devices could appreciate.
I'm actually out.
That's the thing. You're always out. I'm always out of air.
Yeah. Isn't that
so
weird?
I was like, let me buy in bulk, so then I don't feel stingy about using it, and I can stop being out of air.
Yeah. Isn't that weird though? I mean, like it's the atmosphere is just like around us.
Unless you live in Druidia in the movie Spaceballs.
Good one.
because then your air is being sucked out.
Yep. I need to watch that again. It's been a while.
But I don't know. I don't know if anyone continuing the dorky, like if anyone's ever tried using the they have now like USB powered electric blowers, but I was reading online like they're not as powerful, and you kind of want the power to get that kind of that dust off without touching anything.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going back to the disposable ones.
Yep. Oh well.
So again, this is Splunk Talk, the only podcast that's all Splunk and no junk, and that's clearly what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes.
We could talk about Splunk.
Let's talk about Splunk.
Okay. Do you have any news in the developer world in kind of like your area?
While I think about if there's news in the developer world, would you Slack our guest and just make sure that because I forgot to do that before we started.
Well,
just make sure that they're still on board, because I shut off my chatting programs.
I could.
Yeah. So in the developer world, what's going on? Well, a lot of cool stuff is going on. So I am in charge of this developer success program, and we're really doing a lot of helping be the voice of the developer. And it's so interesting that I'm in that role, because when Hal and I first met, Hal went by the name the Lorax because he speaks for the developers.
At the time, yes.
And I'm so glad to pick up the pieces of where you left off years and years later. But I don't know if anyone's been to Splunk Base recently, but the Splunk Base team and the PM have done an incredible job pushing out that update around the end of last year. The UI looks really good. A lot of cool new rich things that can come through. So on like any Splunk based listing, you can now get more granular with seeing what are like installation instructions or troubleshooting, how to contact the author. And I'm really excited about the opportunity there, so that we can just like start to up level all the listings that are out there and provide the authors and editors of those Splunk based items the ability to like, be more clear, be more successful with their customers. So that is really exciting. We also continue to have the Splunk Cloud Developer Edition in public preview. So that's like just sort of like almost like a beta, but we don't use the term beta. It's like a preview release. So certain people, based on their use cases, can be granted access to that. And it's like having Splunk Cloud, but you can like test your apps against it. So
so you get access to Splunk Cloud, so you can build something great for the ecosystem.
Yeah. So that's just been really exciting. Again, that's a thing that you have to apply for. You could go to dev.splunk.com to learn more about that. But you can apply for that, and then the PM who runs that project will go through the applications, and if it's a good fit, you can be granted that. And it's all really exciting. How about
nice.
Well, you tell me what's going on your side. I think I'm going to try to switch this camera over to the computer.
All right, you do it.
But, what's the updates? What's the happy hap?
Well, a big part of my job is kind of tracking new releases that happen in my area. I kind of focus on the platform of our solutions, as opposed to security or observability. So the pieces that are underneath. And it's funny though, because you have to put your mind in this dual mode of you're working for months with the factory on a thing, and then it gets to the customer, and sometimes, it could be 18 months, before something's out. So when it releases, I'm kind of in the middle there, helping to enable the sales engineering and the field. So it's kind of like I have to split my brain to say, okay, wait a second, that project there, when did that release, to customers? So
and do you have to like almost pretend, because like some things like haven't been released yet, but you're talking about them with people that are allowed to be talked to about it? And do you get a little like, you have to do a little mental gymnastics to remember like, wait, what have I talked to you about that I'm allowed to, and what's like new exciting and I haven't?
Not usually, because I'm not as customer facing as I used to be. So this is the place where I'm like, okay, wait a second, what can I talk about now?
Yeah.
Some of the things that roll through though, so Splunk cloud and enterprise, right? The enterprise ships, 1, 2, 3, 4 times a year based on various factors. And then Splunk Cloud ships much more frequently. And then there's services in Splunk Cloud, and those ship, they're not necessarily tied to a cloud release. They could be. And then we've got other things like, I don't know, Splunk Mobile, where they're totally out of band. So it's a bit of, I mean, it's fun. It's fast moving, but it's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of,
it's not the same small company that we started in,
yeah, I
where
guess
it was
that's the
like
point. Yeah.
one primary product, a couple premium apps, and like you generally, because you knew the platform, you could speak to any of the things. And now
Yep.
we've got, all these acquisitions and
Mhm.
so many different platforms that are consolidating and moving and morphing. And
Mhm.
yeah, a lot more exciting, a lot more stuff to keep in the
Yeah,
bread space and the
I think
brain
one
space.
that's worth highlighting though is probably Data Manager. That's probably one of the cooler ones. Data
Pourquoi?
Manager, okay, Porque, because it's kind of like we took a problem of collecting data in the cloud from cloud data sources, and we stopped doing it the way that we were doing it, and we came up with a new architecture, and that new architecture, it just makes a lot of sense. So,
Yeah.
for example, if you need to get data from AWS, you have a lot of servers there, and there's some firewalls in there, but the firewalls are not run by, there's not like a firewall device that you're managing. It's an AWS service, right? So how do you get the logs? They have ways, but there's a lot of complexity into getting that data from AWS, and there's work involved in
That's how you
doing
get the
that.
logs, right? You got to spec some
Right. And
skulls.
then you've got an add-on, and you're scheduling that add-on and all this stuff. It's just a lot of work. Well, Data
Yeah.
Manager does a great job of making that work easier. And it's a cloud service, so it's just a better way to run it. That isn't Data Manager isn't new to everyone. You may not have used it if you're not in Splunk Cloud. It's kind of a reason to check it out, honestly, but it was in preview since, I don't know, like late 2021 or something. But it came out in .conf timeframe, so I guess April
Oh,
of this past year, and then they kept adding to it. So that's actually the cool part, where this is something it's just got this path of innovation, and it's not inside of it's not
the
inside of
core.
Splunk D.
Yeah.
So it's but they'll add GCP to the mix. They added Azure to the mix. So it's kind of these bringing new pieces online, and then they did a bunch more with S3. So now there's ability to kind of push S3 logs. So there's just a bunch of pull S3 logs
Yeah.
in.
Nice. So Bryan just joined us. Bryan, we were just talking about Data Manager, but we're happy to pivot from whatever boring stuff Hal is talking about to whatever super cool, exciting stuff you have to share with us. So welcome to Splunk Talk. We
Welcome to Splunk also.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah.
and that's usually what we like to start with, is what we sometimes stupidly call your orange story. And we'd love to hear yours. Like, tell us, I think you just came on board through an acquisition, if I'm not mistaken, perhaps your t-shirt that says TwinWave.
Correct. TwinWave. Yeah.
Yeah. So would love to hear, tell us about TwinWave, and we'd love to hear about you as a person. What makes Bryan so cool besides the alliteration on the name? Like, you could be a comic book character like Peter Parker.
Thank you. Yeah. So we came on board Splunk about 2 months ago. We were acquired. TwinWave was a company that I started with two other co-founders, Mike Horn and Will Metcalf. All three of us had been working at Proofpoint together. And we started TwinWave to solve a problem that we felt was really an unsolved one out there, which is that SOC analysts have a lot of things to analyze. It's a really hard problem, and the tooling available to them was not up to snuff. They would have to cobble together all sorts of open source tooling. They'd have to do a whole bunch of things on their own. It ended up being really laborious, tedious, repetitive, things that really smart engineers hate. And so we built a platform that would hopefully automate as much of that as possible, so that we could surface those things for them to then use their sort of intelligent creative brains to assess and figure out how to react to. Go ahead.
were you guys like living this life, or were you, like, hey, I've been doing this for a while, and I'd like to try something new and exciting, and like let's try to start a company together? Or was it like your pain, and like how did you, the founders, how did you create that? And the reason I ask is, like, this is an interesting time. Some would say this is a great time to start a company because there's so much great talent kind of returning to the bench, which is a nice way of putting it. And the investment is kind of thinning out, which actually means a great time to incubate. So once you have a proven idea and the investment money is there, you can strike on it. How about for you all? Like, how long ago did you do that, and what motivated it?
Yeah, so we founded TwinWave almost 4 years ago. It was a lifelong dream of mine, for sure, to found my own company. Like, founder CTO is something I always wanted to do. I just didn't have the right idea, and I didn't have the right co-founder. And so it all sort of came together about 4 years ago, where we had an idea. The three of us were kind of ready for the next challenge. We all really liked working together. I feel like we complemented each other extremely well, the three of us. And so it was kind of a no-brainer, like, yeah, let's go do this. And it was fantastic. I really had a great time. And I agree. I think now is a great time in that there's a little bit less noise out there, right? There's not a ton of VC money flooding the market where there's a ton of competitors with really terrible ideas. I think if you have a really good idea and you can prove that idea is good, now's a great time, because you're not going to have quite as much competition out there.
Yeah.
Did you find so going back to the key idea there, what was in the market already that was insufficient, and kind of like, poke further into the technology that you went into?
Yeah, I mean, I think the commercial offerings were pretty much non-existent whatsoever for this particular problem space of tooling to help a security analyst analyze potential threats, right? Whether that be like phishing email or a URL, that sort of thing. SOAR sort of helps, right? Like, SOAR is a great technology.
Splunk was already had Splunk acquired Phantom by the point that y'all got started, or not? Do you happen to know?
Probably, yeah, probably maybe like right around that time.
But not very long.
SOAR is a great technology. I'm a huge believer in SOAR, and TwinWave works best with a SOAR. We're not trying to duplicate that, but so SOAR is great at orchestrating all these different technologies to bring them together, right? Like, let's say you have a phishing email. There's probably 10 different technologies that you want to farm different pieces out to do analysis, but each of those pieces in some ways was a little bit lacking. And SOAR is great at being a general purpose solution, but there's kind of a need for a really specific vertical solution for some of this kind of analysis, and happy to talk about why that is later. But yeah, there were just kind of not really commercial offerings out there. There are a couple open source projects that's kind of our competition, is some open source projects. But again, open source has sort of like a high cost of ownership, and they were really very file focused and didn't have anything at all on the website. And that's actually where the majority, I think, of our customers' threats is on the website, of like phishing websites and really complicated web-based attack chains that end in malware.
You mentioned the things that were out there. I'm just curious. Like, I want to hear more about the vertical thing that you just teased us with, but did you have another business idea? Like, so many people that start businesses like, oh, we're gonna just like deliver food and groceries and stuff, and then they're like, actually, this is pretty saturated, and they pivot to like alcohol or something. And like, did you have to do any of those types of pivots?
We did.
Yeah, was this the first idea, or the second, or the seventh?
Yeah.
In some ways it was the first idea, but it definitely evolved over time. Like, that first idea that we had is pretty different from what we ended up shipping, because as we went along the way and we engaged with customers and saw exactly the kinds of problems they were having, we had to evolve the product, absolutely. And we had to re-architect a little bit along the way.
So would you say like the pain point you were trying to solve is still the same? It's just the way you're implementing it like evolved as you.
Yeah, I think the problem that we saw change. So when we first started, we thought the problem was, okay, customers have all these different technologies that they want to tie together and unify it in one pane of glass, which is a little bit like a SOAR, but we were doing more data parsing. So like, our initial customer had 9 different sandboxes that they had purchased, and they wanted to farm out their analysis to these 9 different sandboxes, which is a thing that SOAR could do. But then they wanted to pull all those results back into a single pane of glass where it would like parse all that data and unify it and merge it. And that's the kind of thing that SOAR maybe doesn't do out of the box. Like it will happily tell you those 9 different results, but it's not gonna like synthesize all this data together. So that was the first iteration of what we built. And then as we started to be exposed to more and more actual live threats, we realized that the real problem was that not that you had these 9 sandboxes to send stuff to, but the stuff that was entering into their pipeline for analysis was not a thing that a sandbox was good at analyzing, because attackers do not distribute the bad thing directly anymore, because technologies are really good at stopping the bad thing if it shows up in an email.
Oh, like a virus or something. Like we can tell if there's a virus, but we'd rather, as an attacker, like lure you to get it from us.
Oh, wait a second. Before you say it, let me do this. Are you saying that the virus, the malware itself is now in the cloud?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's put behind a bunch of hoops that humans are pretty good at walking through and that computers are really bad at walking through. So right, like 20 years ago, people would just email you an executable and have you double click it, right? And then everyone's like, well, how about we block all executables from coming in, problem solved. And then, attackers are going like, oh, I'm going to put it in a zip file. Okay, now you have to double click the zip file, then double click the executable, etc. So there's this constant evolution. But the way it looks right now is they will send you an email with an attached PDF. That PDF has a URL in it. If you click that URL, it takes you to like a SharePoint site. That SharePoint site has a button that you click. You click that site, it takes you to another site. You click that site, and then it downloads a piece of malware, or it downloads a Word document that if you enable macros will then go download malware. So there's all these hoops you have to jump through. Mm-hmm. And sandboxes, if you give them any of those things along the way, will look at that and be like, hey, this looks fine to me. Yeah. When I run this on my Windows operating system, nothing bad happens. And so this seems benign. And so you have to jump through all those hoops to get to that final thing, whether that be the Word document with macros or the actual malicious binary. Then a sandbox is going to be great at detecting that final thing. And that's sort of the problem that we ended up solving for our customers is they had bought all these sandboxes. The stuff that they were sending to the sandboxes were calling clean because there were all these human interaction hoops that needed to be jumped through. So that's what we really ended up building was a vulnerable, gullible human emulator who would go do, click those buttons, download the things, enable the macros, do all that kind of stuff to get to the bad thing. And then we would finally send it off to other 9 different sandboxes.
A little dictionary definition here. So you used the term sandbox. I very easily can play the person who is ignorant. It comes naturally. So is a sandbox basically a system where you're willing to throw anything dangerous at it because it's disposable, you can make a mess of it and you'll spin up another one, and that way it's like contained. It's kind of like I was thinking of in Ghostbusters, and they put the ghost into the
trap.
Yeah, and then
I don't know about the
metaphor doesn't work though at all.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know what the best analogy for a sandbox is.
I mean, it's like a virtual machine though, right? I mean, it's
a lot of them are virtual machine based,
and you can't get out. So
yeah, typically they're going to be a full operating system environment with all the applications where you can detonate something, right? You run an executable or you open up a document and you watch what happens. And they're really carefully instrumented. So they're taking notes on every single system call, every file that gets written to disk, every network packet that gets sent. And at the end of it, they've collected all this information. They run through a bunch of detections and say, oh, hey, this looks like malicious behavior, or this looks like benign behavior. So yeah, that's probably 15-year-old technology at this point. Pretty common, pretty popular. But the threat actors realize, hey, most of the people we're trying to infect have a sandbox. We can't send them a thing that the sandbox is going to detect. We have to send them something that a human is going to interact with, and then the sandbox is going to miss. And so, we call that the attack chain. And so TwinWave does a lot of attack chain following, where we try to jump through all those hoops to get to something that can then be detected as bad.
Nice. So what we're learning is that I am 15 years behind on technology in the security industry.
It's a constantly evolving space, which is why I love security.
Well, I mean, going back to the words you used about there needing to be a vertical solution, I guess that's kind of what you outline now. Burch, you're not new at computers. You're not new at software.
Definitely, I'm not new at computers. Let me put my Windows 3.1 floppy disk into this and I'll boot up and join you.
But like, it's just so specialized. security is a discipline like anything else, where it's just got deep, and if you're not in it, following, then that's actually the problem, because I guess the bad actors, they're innovating every day.
Mouse. What
Yeah,
what
exactly.
did you mean by verticals before?
I guess by vertical solution, I meant that, this particular problem space of analyzing threats that are coming in to your employees, especially if they're coming in via phishing, the general purpose technologies out there, whether that be like SOAR or Sandbox, they're just a little bit too horizontal and not enough vertical. Like they're not targeted to that one specific use case. And so their general purpose solutions, while good, like they tend to miss things. And so we built like a really custom tailored solution to that use case, which is what I mean by vertical there.
So like you're like, oh, well, we're going to solve this vertical, like soup to nuts, instead of being like, this is a general purpose, like element in your evaluation. Like, yeah, you can throw a sandbox and stuff. You can throw it at the sandbox and everything, but then like you need something else to aggregate that data and do something with it. And
right, exactly. Like a sandbox is just it's a real general purpose. Like, hey, throw anything at it and it's going to do its best. But when you get to these really tailored use cases, they just don't have that logic built into them to kind of walk it from start to finish. And so that's what we were building.
So if I'm imagining here, to go to the metaphors, Splunk is maybe the chocolate and TwinWave is the peanut butter.
Exactly. The
Tell me
taste that taste great together. Yeah.
Tell me why they're better together. Like, what was the point? I'm assuming that there was a key thing here that made the two things, more than the sum of the parts.
And by the way, my shirt is the color of nougat today. Or whatever that stuff is in Three Musketeers. Anyway, you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, so we complement a SOAR really, really well. I feel, SOARs are great at orchestrating all these different technologies to kind of run a case start to finish. And, obviously I'm biased, but I feel like TwinWave is the best technology that a SOAR can delegate things to. Yes, delegate it to everything else, but TwinWave is hopefully the crown jewel in the list in your playbook.
For people that are more like IT ops, SOAR, what? Security, orchestration?
Automation and response, yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because orchestration isn't new. That part's not new, and IT shops have been automating forever, and there's frameworks for that. But I think what SOAR brought was some of that specialty needs, that the security kind of audience needed. And then you came along with another even more specialized part of it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so SOARs tend to be built around the idea of a playbook where you have this sort of complex flow chart of decisions and different actions that can be taken. And TwinWave is internalized in some ways like the most advanced playbook that you could ever write, with all sorts of really, custom built intelligence. And so we just like plug right in the middle of a playbook and can do really cool stuff.
So how much
we work great with SOAR? Like you said, Splunk has a SOAR, and so I mean that's one reason why we're great together.
So what is it that you're building? Do you build a sandbox? Do you call them sandboxes when you're using TwinWave? What is it that the end user is doing?
Yeah, we have a sandbox as part of the platform because sandboxing technology is really good. If you want to, analyze malware, sandboxes are a great way to do it. We also integrate with third-party sandboxes. So if you have a Wildfire, a VMware, a FireEye, any of those things, we'll also happily call out to those in the right spots. And then we have lots of static analysis along the way. So let's say, for example, that somebody submits to us an email message, and that email message has a zip file attachment. We'll pull out that attachment, we'll push it into the pipeline for analysis. And then let's say that is a password protected zip file where, we don't know the password. We'll probably try to brute force the password. We'll also go back to that email message and say, hey, are there any words or phrases in that email message that might have been a password? We'll pull those forward.
Oh, that's
our absolute best to crack open that zip file, see what's inside that zip file. Oh, it's a Word document. Okay, we're going to re-inject that. We're going to do a bunch of static analysis. We're going to pull out macros. We're going to emulate those macros. We're going to extract out anything that we possibly can from them, like path names or URLs. It's a URL. We'll send it over to our web browser. We'll go visit that website. We'll click around. We'll do a bunch of things. So it's a whole bunch of different custom built technologies that we built that then also anytime we see something that a sandbox would like to analyze, like an executable, we'll send it to the sandbox. So we have all these different engines and, we call it a pipeline. And so we're just constantly taking the output from one engine, pushing it back into whatever engines make sense, and we kind of continually iterate through this process until we feel like we've walked through the entire attack chain.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So now when I'm thinking the latest analogy that I'm working up here, and I'm trying to think of how to soften this some, because she's really not bad, but I'm like, you've emulated my mother-in-law. She's a great person. She's not great with computers. I love her very much, but I don't actually need, you know what? No, I don't have to support her. She's not had a virus in some time, but a couple years ago,
that she knows of.
Well, I mean, I'm over there often enough. I mean, I am a good grandson.
So you're the
son-in-law. I'm a good son-in-law.
Yeah.
So do you have, basically you probably got Microsoft Word, and you had to work on the automation of Word, as an engine, that you've got to. Okay, gotcha.
So we'll both run Word dynamically in the sandbox, where we're actually running the real Microsoft Word and seeing what it does. But then we also have our own static analyzers that we know how to parse a Word document, rip out all the different components, and analyze them individually as well. So we do both a static and dynamic analysis.
So I imagine that, given that these things change, the bad actors are evolving their tactics, you guys can't stop either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
On average, I would say every 2 to 3 weeks, they throw something wild and crazy at us that we never anticipated. And sometimes the system takes care of it. Sometimes we have to, make a bunch of changes and get it shipped out. We're always on our toes, which, again, that's why I love security as a product space, is that it's not a static problem that you're solving. It's a dynamic problem, and you're really playing against an adversary, sort of like a chess game. You make a move and you wait for them to make a move. They make a move. You have to respond and react. And so, probably 50% of our time is spent just analyzing, paying attention, and reacting to what's out there. And then the rest of the time is, forward thinking what other kind of features we could add.
Is this software cloud-based, or is this something?
It is cloud-based, yes, which allows us to react really quickly, which I really like. One thing we pride ourselves on is just being super reactive, where we wake up in the morning, we see, oh my gosh, these guys are doing something crazy we never thought about, and then hopefully 2 or 3 hours later, we've shipped out software that now addresses it. So that next campaign the next morning, we're going to catch.
Yeah, and you're not in that world of okay, well, hopefully people download this and apply the update with the new, So you can
and we don't have an 18-month ship cycle or anything like that. We're just really trying to get it out there quickly.
Nice. So I want to hear more about you, Bryan. Hal, any other product questions before we pivot to the man? Yes. Oh, your microphone went out because you're on mute.
Oh, yeah. The answer is yes. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Did you want them?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just making sure.
The floor is open.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. I had it. I had one, and it's gone, man.
Okay.
If it comes back up, I'll let you know.
All right. Bryan, how'd you get here? What's your origin story? Did you go to school for tech? Were you self-taught? What motivated you to put what appears to be an octopus tentacle decal coming out from behind the bookcase?
I was going to ask about the octopi.
Yeah.
Okay. In reverse order, the octopus is because at some point I had the really clever idea to paint my office this dark blue color, which I like, but Zoom has a really hard time metering the light in the room because of how dark the background is. And so I needed to get some more light things back there, just so it wasn't constantly essentially washing out everything in the foreground. So there's a white picture there, there's a white tentacle, some white sails, just a little bit of bounce some light back there.
Oh, that's so funny, because I definitely have that problem, and often have to move my camera up just so that it doesn't look like we're projecting on my forehead.
Yeah.
You need to meter your light, man.
I need it. Yeah.
I live in the Pacific Northwest. It's really dark and gloomy in the winter, right now, and so it gets pretty dark in this office. So yeah.
Nice. Very clever. So yeah, what about your academic background?
Yeah, I went to school for computer science. I did not graduate. I made it through 4 full years and did not graduate because I changed schools and changed majors. And so it was going to be a 5-year process. And I got a job in Silicon Valley in the .com boom days. And
did you not, you said you changed the degree at the end.
At the beginning, so my freshman
Oh.
year, I was going to be a biology major because I got the worst advice ever in high school, which is like, don't go into computers. The computer industry is dead. You should never go into computers.
Okay.
And as somebody who
Wow.
always loved computers, I'm like, oh, that's sad. Okay, I guess I'll go into biology.
No,
Biotech is the hot new thing. So I did my freshman year of biology. I'm like, you know what? Like, I think computers are pretty great. And that's when, like applets were coming out. If you remember that, like web browsers were coming out. It was like, oh my gosh, this internet thing's gonna blowing up. So I switched over to computer science, but yeah, I lost a year in the process.
Oh my God, what a dumb advisor.
I know, right? Terrible advice. So 4 years in, I got a job offer to go down to Silicon Valley and work for a .com. I'm like, this sounds so much more interesting than school. So I peeled off. I did that. I moved down to California. Then the .com bust happened about 4 months after I moved down there. So I switched to a security company. That's kind of how I got into security.
At which point your advisor for that one moment was like, see, I told you.
Right. Yeah, totally. So I
think the security thing worked out.
Especially on like the crypto side. I always find cryptography really, really interesting. And so I got a chance to join a security company, and they were building like the world's first intrusion prevention system. Like there have been IDSs out there, intrusion detection systems. These are things that sit on the network and look at packets and try to find bad network traffic, but nobody had really put them in line to act like a firewall, where if they saw something bad, they would actually block that traffic and prevent it from coming through. So that company was called OneSecure. So I got to do that. I got to write Linux kernel software code, which I was like a really big Linux nerd back then, and it was like a dream of mine to write Linux kernel code until I actually started doing it, and then it was terrible, and I never want to do that ever again.
Oh no.
But anyway, so I was a software engineer working on this IPS product, and we were about to ship the product, and we had 0 rules. So if you know anything about like IDS or IPS, it's a technology, but it's really rule or signature driven. You need to have things to look for. So he had built this incredible engine to look for things and nothing to look for. Mm-hmm. And so I was the person who in like every single meeting was like, hey guys, we don't have any rules. What are we going to do about it? So eventually my boss was like, all right, you're going to complain about it. It's now your problem to go solve.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I had to go build an analyst team to go, start writing these detections for this product so that we could ship it. And that's kind of how I started with analysis and running analyst teams. Is I had to go build this team. We were analyzing all this malware. And then again, there was just 0 tooling available to do any of this kind of stuff. And so, since I had a computer science background, I started writing tools for my team. Like I'm going to keep track of everything that coming in, coming out, help them automate some of the processing so that they can spend their time doing more intelligent things and not just shuttling files around and running commands. And so, that's kind of the genesis of TwinWave is, 15 years later, I'm like, this is still a problem that nobody has solved commercially.
Nice.
Yeah.
So where do you get the new content, as it were? So, what is is there a dark web RSS feed?
There essentially is. Yeah, there's a few different really good sources out there where you can get sort of up to the minute malicious URLs, malicious files. Malware Bazaar is a great one. That's just this big feed of all these malicious files. We have it automated where we grab files from there and submit it to our system. And if we ever don't detect them as bad, then that raises an alert and we can go deal something with it.
Oh, that's great. That's funny because you want the false negatives.
Yeah.
In that case.
Yeah.
Exactly. Say it again then. So
a false positive is something that was bad that shows up as good. Actually, maybe I said that
wrong.
Backwards. Yeah.
False positive is
you're looking at a set of known things that are bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
And anything that goes through that and says that it's safe, that's wrong. Basically.
Yep.
So
It's a false negative at that point. Yeah, exactly.
False negative. Thank you. Okay.
Yep. So Malware Bazaar is a great source for malicious files. On the URL side, there's Fish Tank, there's URL Scan.io, there's URL House. There's a bunch of different ones.
Are these like free sites and like the community is just trying to support each other, or are they like okay, interesting.
Yeah, for the most part. Some of them have commercial licensing terms, but some of them are just open and free. But yeah, if you ever want a bad thing to go poke at, there's all sorts of free sources out there. You can go look at stuff.
So it's sort of like the security community is almost like altruistic and like helping each other protect against these adversaries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of information sharing and information sharing groups in the security world because it's such a hard problem to solve. If you're just your little silo, it's almost impossible. And so, like especially like the financial services industry and the healthcare industry, they're really good at all banding together. And even though they're competitors, sharing security information so that they can sort of be more safe as a whole.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. So what is the community, is there a community around TwinWave, and what do people, is there content, third-party content for it as well?
There is not. We're still pretty small, and so we never really got the chance to build much of a community. We do have some people who we kind of have like a friends and family account where those people who are super friendly to us and just really helpful can use it. Yeah, we're a little on the early side for having much of an ecosystem built around TwinWave.
Maybe we'll introduce you to some folks.
Yeah. Definitely, all that will be very different at Splunk, and I'm excited at the opportunities.
Yeah, how do you find your new like role at Splunk? Like, have things changed? Do you find, now that you're under a larger umbrella, like is there burden taken off you that is good, or maybe you miss, or
and I didn't know if I'm supposed to bow or anything to a distinguished engineer. I'm actually not sure.
Oh yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's very much in progress still. Like we've only been here for a couple months, and I spend most of my time actually just making progress towards all that offloading of, how can Splunk help support TwinWave? How can Splunk sales help sell TwinWave? All that sort of thing. So I think it's probably going to be a 6-month process to get to that point where we've offloaded things. But yeah, I mean, it's wild having access to the things that you have at a Splunk scale company that you don't have when you're 7 people.
Oh man. So, and you had worked, you mentioned Proofpoint. Is that, if I'm not mistaken, so you've worked with Gary before?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think the industry has trends, and
Yeah.
we're in the middle of a Proofpoint trend, and I'm liking it so far. It's working out great. So welcome aboard. I'm happy to have you here, Bryan.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Loved working for Gary at Proofpoint, and really happy to be working for Gary here at Splunk.
Yeah, I like him a lot. Cool. What do you see as like looking forward? What are you excited about?
I am really excited to see
that we can talk about publicly.
Oh yeah. Oh right. No, I'm really excited at the potential integrations between TwinWave and Splunk, and the ways that TwinWave technologies can make Splunk products better, the way that Splunk products can make TwinWave better. Like you said, the peanut butter and chocolate. We've made one like delicious peanut butter and chocolate combination, but there's so many more that we could do. A lot of our we had a handful of customers. Almost all of them were also Splunk customers already because it's such a natural synergy. And one of the most common integrations we would see would be customers using Splunk to find things to go look at in their data, sending that to the SOAR sending it to TwinWave, us doing analysis, and then ingesting our data back into Splunk for later analysis. And so, until now, it's been kind of a manual process on their part to do some of those integrations. And so I would love to make that a little more streamlined. We're just out of the box. The best possible way of doing that integration would just be available for somebody with the click of a button. So I'd be really excited to build something like that.
That's cool. What
Awesome.
I'm also curious, like, what are some of the most popular use cases within TwinWave today? I think that'll help, like, for me, like make it like a little more real and
Yeah, I mean, the number one most common use case for us is employee reported phishing, right? So most companies have some way that employees can say, hey, I think this email is a phish. And for them, typically that'll flow into a SOAR. And then typically a human analyst will grab that ticket and then go do a bunch of analysis and say, hey, is this actually bad? If it is bad, what does it do? And if it, based on that information, how should we respond and react? And so TwinWave is a great tool for streamlining that. The customers that we talked to said that in the past, before TwinWave, it would take about an hour to action one of those tickets. start to finish. And then with TwinWave, it might take 15 minutes or 10 minutes.
And it's like automated with TwinWave?
Yeah, we automate all the sort of research and analysis part of it so that we, by the time a human analyst comes to that ticket, they have all the information that they might need to then go make that intelligent decision of, okay, how are we going to respond and react?
Oh, wow.
And then the other benefit of automating that is, oftentimes these phishing sites are only live for a short period of time, right? They might only be up for 3 or 4 hours before they get taken down. And if you have a big SOAR work queue, it's entirely possible that by the time a human analyst gets around to that ticket, it's too late. Site's already down. They can't do their job. But if you automate it with a SOAR and TwinWave, we're going to go immediately look at it while it's still live. We archive off every single scrap of information, every file that was on that website, every network packet, screenshots of everything, all that's archived in that ticket, so that then later when they go to analyze it, they have everything they need, even if it's already been taken down.
Oh, wow.
That's really cool. So I've learned a lot, and thanks a lot for this, Bryan. This has been like a neat way for us to learn, and hopefully our customers and community will appreciate the same. What do you think is just kind of in the future of the space generally, not talking specifically about TwinWave, but like where does the, what I'm thinking about is ChatGPT. Okay. It's been in everybody's minds lately. And I'm thinking, okay, how is it going to affect this? How is that type of crazy AI year that we had in 2022? Any thoughts on that hitting the security space?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that technologies like ChatGPT are, unfortunately, probably more powerful for the threat actors than for the defenders. Because the threat actor has the challenge of coming up with something new every single day that's different from what they did the day before, because security technologies are probably pretty good at catching the thing they did yesterday. And so if you think about like spam or phishing, right, they need to get that email into your inbox. It needs to pass all the anti-spam filters. Whatever words and phrases you used yesterday are probably like going to be caught by a spam filter. You have to come up with a new way of phrasing something, a new way of stringing together sentences that looks plausible, that a human can parse, but that the automated systems are not going to detect. ChatGPT, unfortunately, is like the perfect system for generate an infinite number of phishing emails for me that is going to cause a human to click on it, but is going to bypass the spam filter. You could probably put that prompt into ChatGPT and it would do a fantastic job of generating stuff. And so I think that for defenders, it's just going to be easier for attackers to come up with new and novel things that look different than they did before, but are still going to get a human to engage with them. And so I think the bar just got raised for us defenders.
Wow. That's a scary point you made.
I'll leave you with a counterpoint. Podcast I'll just mention real quick. EconLib or Econ Talk actually is the name of the podcast, and they had an episode. It might have been released today. It was Ian Leslie on being human in the age of AI. Anyway, the line I wanted to repeat here was that we should worry less about the lifelike nature of AI and worry more that human beings are being more robotic and predictable. So when I saw that, I've been thinking about it all day. That email is not going to be more lifelike, but the bar that we are accepting out of a computer generated message is maybe too low. You can't fix that quickly. Like, we're talking about, billions of human beings here, but like maybe the problem will solve itself a little bit in the sense we'll basically be more skeptical of things we see like that. There's no question there, but it's super fascinating to see how this kind of is going to evolve.
I love that sort of counterintuitive thinking.
Yeah. Well, increased skepticism is ultimately a good thing, I think, for defense and security posture. If everybody was just a little bit more skeptical when they looked at email messages or text messages, that sort of thing, I think a lot of attacks would be thwarted. So maybe it's a good thing.
I did once work with someone who I sent them a link to something and they were like, I don't open any links in email, right? You're going to have to find another way to send it to me. And I was like, you're very difficult to we're at the same company.
That is the challenge with security, is to like come up with a good threat and, like to analyze the threats in a way that you can do your job in a low friction way and get the work done, but then not fall for the attacks.
Yeah.
People get the threat model wrong all the time. And I think never clicking a link is like you turned the dial up a little too high.
It may have been a rule he had only for me.
Oh, well. Yeah.
Well, with that, thank you, Bryan. This was a wonderful episode. Really glad we were able to get you on board here, and not only at the company, but also at the podcast to learn more about TwinWave and the space and you as a human. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and happy Splunking.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.